Armstrong. Resistencia y tecnología. Cuando estaba en la cumbre de su carrera, fue derribado por el peor de los rivales, el cáncer. Lo asombroso no es que haya vencido la enfermedad, eso hasta cierto punto es una cuestión del destino. Lo más heroico fue que regresó, y lo hizo aún mejor que antes. Más fuerte, más ingenioso, más rápido, y más decidido que nunca a ser un campeón. ¿Qué hace de Lance un campeón? ¿Que tiene un cuerpo mejor? ¿Que es un mejor ciclista? Él posee agallas y la decisión para salir e inyectar cada gramo de sí mismo a la posibilidad de ser un ganador. Y además tiene a su equipo. Los héroes olvidados de detrás de escena que demuestran la misma dedicación y el mismo compromiso que Lance para hacer de él un ganador.
We came along and looked at every aspect of cycling, and not just the rider and the team, but every piece of equipment, all the way down to the nuts and bolts. I know it sounds possible to do, but we looked at the big things, the frame, the wheels, the hard pieces, but also the little pieces, how to make the bike as light as we could, as strong as we could, as safe as we could. The good news is that it continues to work for us, and the even better news is that it hasn't worked for anybody else.
La fuente de talentos de la que se nutre Lance es muy profunda e incluye a algunas de las mentes más brillantes en tecnología, fisiología deportiva, análisis estadístico y aerodinámica. Los expertos trabajan juntos como un equipo de Fórmula 1, de allí su nombre, el grupo F1. Se reúnen para compartir sus vitales mejoras y análisis. La mayor parte de la tecnología que el grupo F1 incorpora al ciclismo se prueba en un túnel de viento, un entorno originalmente diseñado para probar componentes de aeronaves.
What we're doing here today is testing members of the Discovery Channel Pro Cycling team, attempting to tweak their aerodynamic positions, attempting to improve some of their bike and equipment through measuring their aerodynamic drag.
Aún lo que parece un cambio mínimo en la posición, como un pulgar o un codo más extendido, o una postura un poco más alta del sillín, contribuye a vencer la resistencia del viento.
Okay, tunnel coming on, go ahead and start pedaling.
Pero en una carrera como el Tour de Francia, en la que un ciclista recorre más de 3.200 kilómetros y pasa casi 90 horas en el sillín, puede determinar que una persona gane o pierda.
Look at that screen up there. When it shows him from behind, he's absolutely rock solid. That's great.
Can you go down, cadence a little bit? 105, too high.
El ciclista profesional debe luchar contra el tiempo, y unos pocos gramos menos de peso o un componente levemente más aerodinámico podría permitir subir una pendiente difícil como el Col de Mont a gran velocidad y hacerle la vida más sencilla.
We have a calculation that takes into consideration the grade of the hill you're climbing, the weight of the rider, the density of the air, the rolling resistance of the wheels.
Armado con un motor y con un equipo científico valuado en millones de dólares, hoy el equipo logró hacer un gran descubrimiento técnico. Una serie de cambios mínimos en la posición de Lance en la bicicleta le ahorrará 1 minuto 36 segundos en la prueba de tiempo del Tour de Francia. De hecho, casi todo es probado en el túnel de viento, desde la posición del cuerpo hasta la camiseta que Lance viste.
When we look at apparel as a piece of equipment, one of the interesting things in studying in the wind tunnel, we found that 2/3 of the drag comes off the body, whereas only 1/3 comes off of the bike itself. We recognize a huge opportunity to help the athlete's body be as efficient as possible.
Similar to the way a golf ball is designed, there's actually a texture on the golf ball, the dimples, and what the dimples do is they actually help the ball go farther and faster. The dimples create a sort of artificial turbulent boundary layer, increasing the surface friction of the ball itself, but the trade-off is that flow as it wraps around the ball sticks to the ball a little bit better, so that by the time it peels off the back of the ball, there's a much lower pressure drag coming off the back. We found that we could essentially apply the same principle to different parts of a cyclist's body.
Cuando el brazo de Lance corta el aire, crea una zona de presión baja directamente detrás de su brazo que genera una resistencia. Al aplicar a la superficie una textura con hoyos, como la de una pelota de golf, se reduce la zona de presión baja y esto le permite ir más rápido.
we found that certain objects of certain sizes, they need to be in a textured finish. You know, cylinders that are about the size of biceps, about the size of a lower quadricep. So we definitely don't want to put just simply a smooth surface over the entire body, and we don't want to put a rough surface over the entire body. We really want to mix it up a little bit and make sure we get every surface of the body tuned with just the appropriate texture.
So the air is going to flow over Lance's back here, and then at a certain point it's going to separate. So we actually reduced this back seam to lower so that the air is going to flow across and then lift off before it hits that seam.
It's looking like we're averaging about 150 grams better than standard issue bib short and jersey, which in a 190 kilometer stage, that's looking like somewhere between 3 to 4 minutes worth of time.
Para prepararse para el Tour de Francia, que se corre en julio, Lance comienza a entrenar en noviembre, 8 meses antes de la carrera. Ejercita un promedio de 725 kilómetros por semana. En 8 meses de entrenamiento recorre el equivalente a la mitad del planeta. Sin embargo, a pesar de todo el entrenamiento y la meticulosa atención a los detalles, nunca se tiene la victoria asegurada.
What is it? It hurts.
Siempre hay variables en juego.
Blink a bunch.
Screw the side of the planet. Right there? Still alive. Just put my glasses on, too. God, that thing was killing me. So it just shows you what, like, 1 gram bug, an ounce bug can do. I know. Bring a man down.
There can be no mistakes. There can be no X factor, meaning he can't get sick, he can't have a crash, he can't have anything that he loses a week of training. Every single day is critical.
Mucha gente no se da cuenta de que el ciclismo no es un deporte individual.
Basically, cycling is a marathon combined with chess, combined with NASCAR.
Lance Armstrong ya no puede ganar una carrera solo, de la misma manera que un futbolista no puede ganar un campeonato solo. Jim Okowicz es el ex director deportivo del equipo Motorola de Lance.
Each of the other riders on the team have a specific job to do, and those jobs are very clear and they don't deviate. Lance is the leader of the team. Lance is the quarterback of his team. Ulrich is the quarterback of his team. Basso is the quarterback of his team. They call the shots. Then there are people that you call lieutenants, people that can make it the furthest in the race each day. He would be the last rider to give Lance some shelter in the draft on the last mountain of the day. He would not use Lance in the race until that moment, because he needs to be good in the final moment when the real race for victory happens. And then you have other people that are called domestiques. Food, water bottles, whatever Lance needs during the day, they go back to the cars, they pick up rain jackets, they bring it back through.
Anybody else wanted something? I didn't hear anything. Ask again. I need some water.
Those are your 3 primary positions. And then at the end, you see Lance and the other quarterbacks come up and they start to race against each other. And that's the real drama in professional cycling, and those 12 or 20 survivors are up front and they're just doing everything they can to win that race that day.
At the end of a pro race, the guy who wins the sprint isn't the guy with the most speed, it's the guy who's not tired.
Al igual que en el fútbol americano, la función principal de los compañeros de equipo de Lance es bloquear. Pero en lugar de bloquear la defensa del rival, ellos bloquean los vientos. Esta técnica se denomina drafting. Lo ideal es que el líder de un grupo esté en la tercera o cuarta posición. Allí solo hace el 75% del esfuerzo que hace el ciclista en primera posición. Si tenemos en cuenta que las pruebas en túneles de viento demostraron que el 80% de la energía del ciclista se gasta en cortar el aire, se aprecia la importancia del drafting. Ir directamente detrás de un compañero de equipo sirve si se tiene el viento de frente. Pero ¿qué sucede si el viento viene de atrás? En ese caso se debe avanzar en una formación escalonada.
A group of 6 to 10 riders could probably go over 5 miles farther in an hour than an individual. Each rider will rotate through for maybe 200 or 300 meters where you're sprinting at the front. The riders behind are resting, and they'll all be sharing the work.
La mayor preocupación del equipo es asegurarse de que el líder esté descansado para resistir el ataque del ciclista rival en las últimas etapas de la carrera.
The idea is to be with riders that you can outsprint at the end. Or if you're a really strong rider, if you can narrow your competition down so that you don't have all the sprinters still with you. Tactically, what's happening in bike racing, it's like if one of the fastest runners that wins the Olympic gold medal in the 100 or the 200 or the 400 meter dash could follow in the footsteps of the guy in the marathon and save enough energy to come into the last 200 meters still there. And at that point, no matter how tired the sprinter is, if he still had the energy to be there, you can imagine what he would do to the marathon runner in the final 100 or 200 meters. He would basically beat him by 50 meters. The thing I've always enjoyed the most about cycling is that the strongest rider doesn't always win. It's generally the smartest rider.
Es en esa batalla entre los líderes de equipo cuando el camino se torna difícil, cuando se pone a prueba la entereza del ciclista y cuando se ve a los verdaderos campeones. Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, Miguel Indurain y ahora por supuesto Lance Armstrong. Ellos son los héroes del ciclismo. Lance es el líder del equipo de Discovery, pero este hombre es el genio detrás del equipo. Johan Brunel, director deportivo del equipo de ciclismo profesional de Discovery Channel, tiene un impresionante récord. Uno de los mejores momentos de su carrera fue cuando batió el récord de velocidad en el Tour, 50 kilómetros por hora. En su trabajo como director, dicta tácticas y estrategias al equipo por radio.
Lance Armstrong, having seen these conditions go from absolutely miserable to abysmal, some of the worst of the year so far, and so much rain has fallen, it's making the communication very tough between the team directors and the riders.
Well, he's giving him a new earpiece there, Bob, but how on earth do you put it on it in conditions like this?
I told you to put it on.
I know.
What I look like, Houdini or something?
De hecho, Lance y Johan compitieron uno contra otro en 1995. Estos antiguos rivales se hicieron amigos y cómplices.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Johan hadn't been Lance's director, he wouldn't have won his first tour. There are probably several of his tours he wouldn't have won.
Very good, Lance, very good. Come on. Very good, looking good.
En el equipo de Discovery hay ciclistas de 15 países. Que Johan hable con fluidez 6 idiomas es una ayuda invalorable a la hora de comunicarse.
No necesitas chaleco ni nada.
Vamos a ver, ya empujamos de querer. Vamos a ver lo que hacemos. Déjame.
Eso es todo.
Okay, ciao. There's a lot of information coming into the car, which tells us who's ahead, how many seconds the breakaway has. Okay, so 5 riders left in the front now, 5 riders left in the front with Chechu. I have to make sure that they know the course. Tell them what's coming up front. A lot of water flooded. The road is flooded, like 3 to 4 kilometers ahead of you. In the big races, we have also TV in the car, so that's another device where we get a lot of information on. I just try to put myself up there and think how I would do it to be as economic as possible and just save everything for the final. I think he's the best in the business. We were linked up, six years ago for absolutely no reason. It's just one of those times in history when somebody comes along in your life and makes a huge difference. Boys, we can still win.
Johan Brunel, el motivador y el cerebro, es sin duda uno de los mejores directores de la historia del ciclismo. Pero mucho antes de Johan, Lance tenía otra directora deportiva más cercana a su corazón.
When he was 10 years old, he was running in 10Ks. And not only just showing up for the race on Saturdays, but during the week he was running and training. I would map out a 6.2-mile course for him, and he would train during the week on that course. He started doing triathlons and was competing when he was 14 years old in triathlons.
I got a call in 1985 from Lance's mother saying her son's a triathlete and she was looking for sponsorship. And I was just trying to be polite. I was thinking, oh, give me a break, lady. And I asked, well, what kind of results has he had? And she told me what his results were, and I realized that he was better on the bike. He was ahead of all the gods of triathlon, all the best guys, and he was 14, and I wanted him riding our parts. The first time I ever talked to Lance on the phone after I talked to his mom, and his 14-year-old triathlete, was probably the most arrogant, obnoxious 14-year-old I ever talked to in my life. And I thought, well, he's really talented. I think we'll sponsor him anyway and just take a chance.
I would say confident, and other people would call it cocky. But I say that's what gives him the confidence to win.
He wound up being the youngest world champion on the road ever at the age of 21.
I first met Lance very interestingly 3 weeks after he won his first World Championships, when he showed up with Chris Carmichael in a very straightforward, unabashed presentation. I want to become a really good cyclist. I sort of smiled. I thought winning the World Championships is, if not the youngest, one of the youngest ever to win the single-day road race. You already are a good one.
El corazón de Lance puede bombear la sorprendente cantidad de 34 litros de sangre por minuto cuando rinde al máximo. Un corazón normal bombea solo 19. Durante ese mismo minuto su corazón late más de 200 veces. Eso hace que sea 3 veces más eficaz que el de un hombre normal.
If you put him in a ring with someone else, he'd be the last guy standing. And his approach to winning was, just get me out there and I'll outslug whoever it is. He didn't race necessarily to win, he just raced to make people suffer, to show how much stronger he was. And he raced to decimate people and to win by as much as he could. Not just to win, but to humiliate people.
Era campeón nacional, campeón mundial e incluso había ganado etapas del Tour. Lance estaba en la cima del mundo.
I think everyone world round would have said that his chances of surviving the illness were in the 30 to 40% range. He was a world-class athlete, used to having lumps and bumps and pains around his body, and particularly in the area on the saddle. He probably undoubtedly attributed the pain and swelling in that area to some injury he had suffered on the bike. This is the CT scan from when he presented in 1996. As you can see, these large, whitish areas throughout his lung represent areas where the testicular cancer had deposited and grown. This should all be black. And this is a brain CT scan, and here is one of the areas of deposits that was, again, found its way to his brain and actually it had to be removed surgically. The impact of his treatments were in the short term debilitating, devastating, nutritionally depleting, and in every fashion he was beaten down by the treatments and the disease. Had you asked me to bet on his chances of A, surviving his disease, B, maintaining any athleticism after his treatment, or C, win any Tour de France's, I obviously would have not taken any of those bets because the odds were against him on every one of those scores.
First thing he said, very first thing he said, "Ouch, I'm going to beat this thing."
La primera opción de tratamiento hubiera incluido bleomicina, una quimioterapia que hubiera dejado secuelas irreparables en sus pulmones y hubiese puesto fin a su carrera. El nuevo tratamiento incluyó una droga llamada ifosfamida, que aunque es más dolorosa y debilitante a corto plazo, no deja secuelas y le permitió regresar a su bicicleta.
Never did I doubt, never. I just, the fear of losing my only child, never did I entertain the thought that I would lose him. I think of several low points, but really the reality of that low point was when Lance came downstairs after he'd already had one round of chemotherapy, found out he had two tumors in his brain, and was going to have brain surgery shortly thereafter. And just before then, he comes downstairs, he sits down for breakfast, he's got a ball cap on, and he takes off his cap and he says, "Mom, my hair is falling out." It was horrible.
Quizá por sus intensos deseos de ganar, Lance optó por atacar la enfermedad con el mismo empeño y la misma decisión con la que corría.
I think his physiology definitely allowed him to tolerate the chemotherapy better than the average person. His experience with pain and suffering allowed him to emotionally and physically get through the treatments better than the average person. The fact that he was nutritionally and physically fit gave him the reserves to tolerate the treatment better than certainly you or I.
I know exactly what I believe that gets him up those mountains, and those are long mountains, and those descents are hard and tough, and just getting through those crowds. I really believe that all he has to do is go back to that day that he was laying in that bed when he was so sick that he couldn't even talk on the phone, or raise his head. That's what gets him up and down those mountains.
It is an absolute tribute to his strength, his will, his focus, and his desire to be better after cancer than before that allowed him to achieve what he has achieved. And it remains an absolutely stellar example of what people can do after cancer.
I just wasn't as hungry as I should have been as an athlete before the illness, and so I think it was this opportunity to really, it's a cliche, but to really have a wake-up call. I mean, I woke up and just thought, man, this is my life. I really think this is the only shot I have at it, and I'll just go for it.
So when Lance got cancer and he came back from that, he rebuilt his body 20 pounds lighter with the same power as a cyclist. So what he did was he took a guy who was a world professional champion and had won stages in the Tour, and you improved his power to weight ratio by 10%. Usually, races are won by 0.5%, by 1%. To have a 10% improvement is just so astronomical that you can't imagine.
Lance comenzó a prestar particular atención a su fisiología y usó una serie de pruebas muy específicas para mejorar su rendimiento.
Metabolic profiling with lactate testing is used to assess the capability of probably 80, maybe even higher percent of the elite pro cyclists now. It's 3 different measures of his performance capability: heart rate, lactate, oxygen uptake. All of them critical to performance. All of them things that there'd be a lot of focus on Lance's training program with.
Se monitorea el rendimiento para aumentar la producción de energía. Todos tenemos un límite de rendimiento, pero conocerlo y entrenar dentro de ese límite permite a un atleta como Lance generar la mayor cantidad de energía en el fragor de la batalla. Una prueba para medir la eficacia de los pulmones es la del consumo máximo de oxígeno, la VO2 max.
VO2 max is your best measure of aerobic capacity, your ability to do work.
Lance Armstrong usa oxígeno para generar una asombrosa cantidad de energía en su VO2 max, más de 500 watts. Del aire que respira extrae la asombrosa cantidad de 83 mililitros de oxígeno por kilogramo de peso corporal. Un joven sano de 20 años puede generar 250 watts de energía y extraer tan solo 45 mililitros de oxígeno. En otras palabras, todos respiramos la misma cantidad de aire, pero Lance la aprovecha el doble.
When we did his metabolic capacity, and I could see the amount of power that he could put out in watts, and his oxygen uptake, those were exceptional. They were among the very highest that we had tested.
Cuando aumenta la intensidad, como sucede al escalar los Pirineos, los músculos crean ácido láctico, lo que genera el extenuante ardor que se sufre al hacer grandes esfuerzos.
At the end of this 4 minutes, I'm going to do a blood draw, just a little bit off the tip of your finger, and I'm going to test that for lactate. So you just go nice and steady. As the test goes on, we'll start to see that lactate just build up in his blood. And at some point, for any athlete, whether a beginner or Lance Armstrong, that lactate will build up to the point where it forces the body to stop. Just simply can't go on any farther. So. Can you do another stage, Jim? Okay, we're going to take you through. Hang on.
This is like the end of an endless climb.
Nice, Jim.
All right.
Nice.
Very good. Very good.
Por razones desconocidas para la ciencia, los músculos de Lance producen menos ácido láctico que los de una persona normal. Más aún, su cuerpo elimina ese ácido láctico de manera más eficiente. Cuando él supera su capacidad aeróbica durante periodos de intensa producción de energía, como en una carrera corta a máxima velocidad por la final, Lance puede sostener su máxima energía más tiempo que los demás competidores. Otra herramienta que los ciclistas usan es la de entrenar en altura para incrementar su capacidad de transporte de oxígeno. Sin embargo, Lance parece metabolizar el oxígeno en altura mejor que los demás.
And Lance doesn't appear to have much of a drop in his oxygen uptake capability as he climbs higher and higher and higher.
Cuando los pulmones no tienen tanto oxígeno a su disposición, el cuerpo genera más glóbulos rojos. Eso aumenta la capacidad del ciclista de usar el oxígeno. Así absorbe más en su sistema cuando más lo necesita. Algunas personas del mundo del ciclismo ven el fenomenal éxito de Lance en el Tour de Francia y lo acusan de aumentar artificialmente sus niveles de glóbulos rojos. Pero Lance dice que sus críticos se equivocan. Lance Armstrong es sin duda el atleta que más se sometió a controles de drogas en el mundo y ni una vez falló en un análisis. Pero a pesar de su entrenamiento, de las pruebas de rendimiento y de los largos recorridos en altitud, hay algo que un ciclista no puede evitar.
Elite athletes are very unique individuals of how they deal with pain. These are sensations from my body telling me how hard I'm working.
You know, it's part of the job, so you have to suffer in training, you have to suffer in the races. You know, of course, that type of suffering changes throughout the year, both in training and racing. You know, if you talked about the early season camp in California, I mean, that's pure 100% miserable suffering. But, you know, here we are and just before the tour, and I go out on a long training ride or do some hard testing, race simulation, all in the races, and it doesn't feel at all like it did in January. So that's the type of suffering that I tend to enjoy.
Mientras Lance forzaba su cuerpo a nuevos extremos, inspiraba a su equipo tecnológico a que le siguiera el ritmo.
That could have been better. That could be an insert foil there.
Hay 3 etapas claves si Lance quiere ganar por 7ª vez el Tour de Francia. La primera tiene lugar en el primero de los 23 días de carrera y es una prueba contrarreloj individual.
Technical aspect of being able to race in the Tour de France is only comparable to something like Formula One or real high-end IndyCar type racing in a car, where you're at high speeds and you're 2 inches off somebody's bumper, and you've got it going as fast as it can go, and you have to trust that person in front of you, and you got to trust the person behind you the whole time, and so you're constantly on the edge. Anything can happen any moment, anytime, any day, any week, anytime during those races.
Lamentablemente para los admiradores, el Tour de Francia de 2005 será el último en el que Lance compita.
At the same time, I've decided that the Tour de France will be my last race as a professional cyclist.
La carrera cubrirá 3.606 kilómetros y desde un comienzo demuestra las agallas que los ciclistas deberán tener solo para llegar al final. En lugar del prólogo habitual, comienza con una prueba contrarreloj individual, una carrera corta a máxima velocidad. Lance necesita estar preparado para la salida. Una falla y podría tener una desventaja de tiempo a solo 19 kilómetros de haber partido. La primera oportunidad que Lance tendrá de usar su bicicleta de escalar será en la etapa desde Grenoble hasta Courchevel. Luego de ascender el majestuoso puerto de Roselon, los ciclistas deberán subir 22 kilómetros con una pendiente de 6 al comienzo, luego de 8 y finalmente de poco menos del 10%. La recta final en Courchevel demostrará quiénes son más resistentes. Lance ya lo demostró antes en las montañas y esta será una oportunidad para ver cómo lo hace de nuevo. La etapa 15 quizá determine quién use el suéter amarillo de campeón al ingresar a París. Luego de escalar los Alpes no tendrán días de descanso. La segunda etapa será en los Pirineos, cubrirá 205 kilómetros y contará con 6 cuestas salvajes. Esta etapa es particularmente importante para Lance. En el Tour de 1995, en estas montañas, al descender de Col de Porte d'Aspet, su compañero de equipo, Fabio Casartelli, tuvo un accidente que le costó la vida. Casartelli quería ganar la etapa hasta Limoges, que era la siguiente en el Tour de 1995. Lance ya ganó esta etapa en memoria de Fabio, en homenaje a su amigo fallecido. Lance alzó 2 dedos al cielo para que Fabio supiera que esa victoria era para él. Cuando Lance habla de esta etapa hacia Limoges, dice que no sintió dolor ni sufrimiento. Dijo que sentía como si tuviera la fuerza de 2 hombres, la suya y la de Fabio.
Lance has indelibly burned his dominance in the Tour de France into the history books.
He's different than everyone else. He's just the right person at the right moment to do this.
Guys race, prepare, train, organize their teams completely different after Lance than before Lance. He's changed the sport to bring in more technology, more determination, more precise training, and people, when they say, I want to be a great athlete, now they have the benchmark in my mind of the most complete athlete, from preparation to execution to just every extra ounce of his being going into it we've ever seen.
Lance no disfrutó solo las 6 victorias en el Tour, las compartió con otros sobrevivientes del cáncer. La Fundación Lance Armstrong financia la educación y la investigación del cáncer. Su lema es Live Strong.
We believe in life, your life. We believe in living every minute of it with every ounce of your being, and that you must not let cancer take control of it. I hope my legacy is not one that's just about winning the Tour de France. In fact, I hope the Tour de France is a very small part.
My fondest hope is they remember him as an athlete that clawed his way back from basically the depths that any human can be in. When they are in those same depths and coming out of them, look and say, well, Lance did it, maybe I can too.
El Tour de Francia representa un compromiso con una causa a la que a alguna gente le cuesta entender. Quizá no tengan en cuenta que es una causa que no se limita al dolor de un ciclista en particular. Es una oportunidad para un hombre de distinguirse en un campo de batalla único. En 1903, el fundador del Tour de Francia hizo una declaración pública que resume el encanto que el Tour ejerce en un atleta. Él dijo: en tardes tórridas, pueblos enteros se presentarán ante ustedes. Sus manos se alzarán en un aplauso. Sus ojos se abrirán para registrar un recuerdo perdurable de la batalla. Lance Armstrong se destacó como héroe en este campo de batalla tan especial. Ganará por 7ª vez. Eso aún está por verse. Pero sea cual sea el resultado para Lance, un hombre que conquistó el cáncer, la victoria no reside en cruzar la llegada, sino en cruzar la partida. Porque mientras los hombres sigan practicando ciclismo, la gente no podrá hablar de esta gran carrera sin hablar del gran Lance Armstrong.